Georgia has won 13 straight against Kentucky, but coming into this game, it'll be the battle of the undefeated. So we'll see if they can make it 14. Our Georgia beat writer Chip Towers. Chip, what are the biggest keys to this game considering the issues Georgia's had on both sides of the ground game, especially against Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it in terms of matchups, they're not great matchups for Georgia, both from the standpoint of running the football and stopping the run. You know, Kentucky, nobody runs the football like Kentucky. Incredible, Ray Davis. And, you know, you talk about Georgia winning 13 in a row in this series. You would never know it talking to Kirby and Mark Richt, who we got to talk to this week. I mean, because Kentucky's been a tough game. Now Georgia wins them.
At the door.
They have been knocking at the door, and they're just dying to get across the finish line against Georgia finally. And it really is a tough matchup for Georgia from the standpoint of them having Ray Davis struggling a little bit with stopping the run, and then, you know, running the football themselves, because this defense now, we're probably not talking enough about Kentucky's defense. They really load up and force you to throw the football, and Georgia's going to have to prove themselves in that regard too.
Georgia was 8 for 13 on third down against Auburn. That's a pretty spectacular stat, and you want stats like that in close games like that. Yeah. How impressed were you with that, and how much more crunch time success do we need to see from the Bulldogs?
Well, I was very impressed with it, and, you know, you don't want it, right? Ultimately, you want to blow people out like Georgia has been, but I think the biggest stat, if you look, you know, Georgia's 2 SEC games this year, they've won by 8.5 points. The last 2 years, that's been 30 points and 20-something points, you know, so they're much closer games. But I thought Carson Beck grew up unbelievably in this game. He was a little bit shaky early on, got some tough breaks, but really settled down in the second half. Of course, he started finding number 19 a little bit, which is we'll probably see more of going forward. But I thought Carson Beck grew up, and Georgia 8 for 13 on third down. That's the ultimate stat. Keeping the chains moving. A lot of that had to do with McConkey coming back 3 times. He caught first down passes on third down. What an amazing comeback for that guy who's still not 100%.
Ladd, to me, seems like kind of old reliable for Georgia. It's not always the flashy plays, though he can do that too, but to your point, he's still on the mend.
Right.
But he's your go-to. A lot of times last year for Stetson Bennett, he was your go-to when you just needed that old, reliable player. Getting him back, getting Javon Bullard back.
Yeah. How
big is it to have those guys as healthy as they can be going against Kentucky?
Huge. I'm eager to see how Javon Bullard is, because he was really limping when he left.
Post-game, he was limping.
He was limping big time, so I'm sure he'll get lots of care. But, you know, McConkey, the amazing thing about him, you talked about old, reliable, right? Because it's true. He's so experienced, and people ask me all the time, how does he get so open, right? And it's because, I mean, he looks at the defense. He knows what play they've got called. He knows where to squat in the zone, or where it's going to be open. He's just great at, really on the fly kind of reads. And him and Carson, I think that was the most important thing, was he got some time in last week, is they're able to understand each other and predict a little bit what each other's going to do. So having everybody back, I thought that was huge at Auburn. And I think it's even going to be bigger here at Sanford Stadium on Saturday night.
Another factor, it seems to me, when all else fails, you can always give the ball to Brock Bowers. And you really cannot go wrong. And I'm looking at Kentucky's defense, and I'm thinking, could this be another Brock Bowers Heisman campaign game?
Well, you know, Kirby said it Saturday night, and it's true. He says that, you know, you wonder sometimes why you don't give it to him every time. Yeah. And, you know, he truly can. Listen, we've joked about this year. He really can line up in the backfield as much or any time you want. I mean, he does. They have kind of an F-back, H-back role for him anyway. But I'm talking about, you can just line him up, you know, at the running back position and do a lot of things with him. And it's going to be interesting, because this Kentucky defense in particular, it's kind of second level oriented. They got, you know, big number 0 in the middle, but they play a lot of guys.
Jordan Davis
That's
today.
Right. Yeah, very much like him. And so getting Brock open in that second level could be even more difficult. I mean, you may have to hit him deeper, you may have to hit him shorter, but any way you do it, you got to get the ball to 19, right?
How big a game is this for Georgia? Because it does seem, to our earlier point, it does seem like Kentucky's always knocking at the door. Sometimes they're knocking at the door, and then Georgia blows them out of the water. But last year, that was not the case. That game was close, and you wonder, could this be the time? If you're a Kentucky fan, you're probably thinking, could this be the time we can actually edge Georgia?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're in that game. Sometimes Georgia can put games like that away more than you would expect.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think ESPN made out like a bandit in this, right? Getting the two undefeated, two of the three teams in the SEC that are still undefeated, getting them together on this field. And I think if it was anybody but Kentucky, there would be a lot more attention on this game nationally. But Kentucky didn't play the greatest schedule, kind of like Georgia. They haven't played a great early schedule, and so they haven't been in the polls. They just now popped into the top 25 this week. Otherwise, you would have a top 10, top 15 matchup, premier matchup. So it's probably not going to get as much national attention as it probably deserves, but it will if Georgia loses, right? You're talking about that. If Georgia loses, you'll get all the national attention.
We'll see if the Bulldogs can make it 14 in a row against the Wildcats. Chip, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks to all of you for watching. Make sure you go to ajc.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel to find more videos just like this one.